All right, what's up, you guys? Mitko here. I hope you are doing well. I'm super excited to be joining you guys today from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. We're going to be for the next couple of months, and I'm so stoked to have you guys here. We're going to be talking about some really exciting things that have happened in the news over the last week that concern you guys as digital nomads, as remote workers, and online entrepreneurs. We've got some big news. So we have a lot of things to talk about. We're going to have some fun. I'm really excited. I have my coffee here with me. I know that it's noon Eastern. So wherever you guys are from, happy Monday, wherever you guys are joining in from, at least I should say. But I'm super stoked for this. It's going to be a lot of fun. So while we kind of join some things in, as people join in, I should say, a few things to cover. First of all, make sure that you introduce yourself in the comments. I'm going to be watching the comments the entire time. So if you have questions as we're covering some of the news, make sure that you jump in and ask them, and I will address them if possible. Also, give this video a thumbs up. I do one of these Nomad Insider sort of coverage of the news, a news breakdown, if you'd like to say so, every single Monday at 12 p.m. EST. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because that way you're never going to miss one of these. So with that out of the way, you guys, I would love to just jump in because we have some really fun things to talk about, some really interesting things to talk about concerning our world, the digital nomad world. And the very first thing here is Facebook's announcement that they're changing the name of the company to Meta. And this is all about their focus on the metaverse and that they want to be kind of like the dominant player in that space. But really, the big question here is, what does that mean for remote work? So what I'm going to do here very quickly is I'm going to share my screen with you guys so that I can show you the article that we actually discussed about this. So very quickly here. All right, so here is that article. It's by CNET, and what it really focuses on is what is the metaverse and why is big tech obsessed? And my thought here was, okay, great. Why is big tech obsessed with it? But also, what does that mean for us as remote workers and as digital nomads? And first of all, let's just very quickly talk about what is the metaverse. If you've never heard of this before, the metaverse is really a concept that is sort of like the Matrix, if you want to talk about it. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Ready Player One, but if you have, then you have a basic understanding of what the metaverse is. And it uses virtual reality and augmented reality to make digital interfaces feel more real. So if you haven't had the chance yet, definitely go and check out Facebook's announcement video. They had this some people thought it was cool. Some people thought it was kind of weird. This video in which Zucks and a whole bunch of other people from Facebook kind of like played out what it would be like to be in the metaverse. But it allows you to kind of interface with real world and the digital world all at once. And what's really interesting about the metaverse in terms of features, I'm going to stop sharing my screen since you guys have already seen this, but what makes the metaverse really interesting is actually its use of blockchain. And you don't really need to understand everything about how blockchain works, but the idea here is that blockchain actually allows code to be more open source. So you don't really need to have permissions anymore to use another company's code. It's all open and available for everyone. And what that means for you as a user is that you can actually more seamlessly go from app to app to app, if that makes sense. So kind of think of it as Lego blocks, and the metaverse is one really big Lego block. And then everything else can be sort of other Lego blocks kind of built on top of it, and they all work together. And as a user, what that means is that if you are a Fortnite player or any other video game, for example, and you have a certain outfit for your Fortnite character, that is now actually a thing, an outfit that you can use as your Zoom avatar, for example, during calls. So it almost makes this connection between all of these different apps that we have at the moment. If you can think about, like Zoom and Slack and Facebook and Instagram or whatever other app that you use, and they're all kind of these little separate pockets that exist by themselves. The metaverse ties them all together and makes it one huge seamless experience in which you kind of can use all the different features of all of them. I'm not a metaverse expert, but that is kind of a very simple way to understand it. And again, going back to that Ready Player One idea, if you've ever seen the movie and how they're sort of chasing after these items or these Easter eggs, or for example, like you might have some sort of like a very strong weapon, right? That is like one of the only weapons like that in the world of Ready Player One. That is essentially an NFT or a non-fungible token. So for those of you guys that are into crypto, that understand that that is essentially the only single item like that in the entire world that carries certain properties. So this is kind of how you can see Ready Player One using blockchain technology inside of the movie, inside of the idea of the story, even without really calling that out. So this is a really interesting development. It's something that I feel like Facebook has been moving towards for a while. They've been talking about this for a while, acquiring Instagram and WhatsApp and kind of making them work together is a step towards that. But what does that mean for remote work? So the interesting thing here in this CNET article is that Zucks actually specifically said that their goal with their metaverse is to, and I quote, bring people together for work. So the idea here is that remote work is done, guys. Like, we know it's already happening. Sure, companies and employees alike are still trying to figure out how to actually make remote work, and that will continue. However, the dominoes are already falling, and this is going to be the for sure eventuality down the road, is that as many companies as possible are going to be remote or doing some percentage of their work remote. And what Facebook or Meta, I'm not quite sure at what point to really switch out calling the company Facebook versus Meta. What they're trying to do here is to kind of be two steps ahead. They know that this is the direction in which the world is headed in, and they're trying to kind of be where the puck is going, not where it is right now, as Wayne Gretzky said. So they're kind of saying, okay, if the dominoes are falling, where do they all end up? And they're trying to jump ahead to that point so that they're the answer when we are all kind of ready for the metaverse, everybody's working remotely, and so on and so forth. Now, the big issues here with remote work in the metaverse, I'm not saying these are issues that are going to be for sure, but it's definitely kind of the issues to look out for as a remote worker, is that if remote work goes in the direction of taking place entirely in virtual reality or some sort of augmented reality, where I can be sitting here at my desk in PV and you can be in your home office in New York, but yet we're still together in a meeting room or working together even, so that I can literally turn around and tap your shoulder or something like that virtually and ask you a question. The issue with that is that it could essentially create a virtual cubicle and bring all the issues that we experience with the cubicle into a virtual reality where we still work remotely, yet we still bring all the negatives of that cubicle work. It could essentially rid our need to figure out asynchronous work, which is the goal of remote work. It's sort of, okay, we're all working remotely right now. There's definitely some uncomfortable parts of doing remote work as it is now. But the idea is that as we figure out asynchronous work, those issues will be resolved for the most part. Now, the problem with a metaverse angle to remote work is that we won't have to solve those issues. If they're able to develop the metaverse very quickly and are able to implement it, which I don't think they will be. I don't think we're quite there yet. Like the stuff that they showed on that announcement, I think that we're not quite there yet. But if that comes sooner than us as a economy and as a working society figure out asynchronous work, we could essentially end up in a world in which, sure, we're working from home, we're working from wherever we want to be, but we're still stuck 8 hours a day in a chair. We just choose where that chair is. And I'm not super stoked about that. I would really like for the metaverse to sort of be like a secondary addition once we've already figured out asynchronous work. And this is something that one of the other articles that we're going to talk about that came out last week kind of talks about. But that is really one of the first main issues, is that if if the metaverse creates this sort of virtual reality cubicle, we might end up right where we started. And it might also kind of slow down the decentralization of opportunity that remote work promises. Because one of the really beautiful things with remote work is that companies can hire the best people for that position. It doesn't matter where in the world they are. So as up until now, as we've talked about on this channel and on the podcast a lot, you had to hire the person that was closest to your office, even if they're not maybe the best fit for that job. While with remote work, you can hire somebody from Portugal that is actually a much better person for that position. The worry here is that if the metaverse introduces a sort of virtual reality cubicle, it could retain that focus on working with people only in that specific time zone. So it could restrict that decentralization of opportunity. Now, I do think that the cat is out of the bag with that to an extent, and more companies are going to figure out that it's okay to not necessarily have complete overlap. I do think some overlap is good in terms of time zones, but this is something to just keep an eye out for in terms of what the metaverse could mean for remote work. Now, the other really big issue here has more to do with Facebook, or Meta, as they're now rebranded, being the sole creator and owner of the metaverse, and not so much the metaverse as a concept. And that is privacy. Because Facebook/Meta, whatever you want to call it at this point, has already announced that they will be recording everything that happens inside of their metaverse that they're creating. And the reason why they're doing this is for moderation, to make sure that there's no kind of bad things happening inside of their metaverse. But I can guarantee you that they will also be using it for advertising and all of the other things that Facebook already uses your data for. But the data that they're collecting for us at the moment is nothing compared to the data they'll be able to collect if we enter this sort of metaverse stage in our digital usership, because the data is just going to be so much bigger. They're going to be able to collect so many more data points about us as users. And on top of that, don't forget what Zuck said. Their goal with their metaverse is to bring work into it. To essentially, they want corporate entities, businesses, to do business inside of their metaverse. And because of what we talked about at the very beginning, where you have the metaverse as sort of like the foundational Lego block, and all of these other apps are sort of stacked and built on top of it, which the benefit of that is that it creates this sort of seamless use case digitally. You're kind of like seamlessly moving from one app to the other. The problem is all of those will be built on top of Facebook's metaverse. So they'll be able to have access to all of the communication that happens inside of that metaverse, even inside of those apps. So imagine Facebook having access to everything that you say in your email, everything that you say on Slack, everything that you discuss on Zoom calls. All of that will be privy to Facebook, and they will have moderation on top of that. So yes, some sort of moderation is needed to make sure there's not some kind of nasty stuff going on there, but also think about how much data and power they will have over our data if they can not only access all the things they can already access through Facebook, but they also know the kind of things that we're talking about inside of Slack, inside of Zoom, inside of email, all of those things. So that is just a lot of power to give to a single entity. And this is where it kind of shifts away from the blockchain and cryptocurrency ideas that are kind of carried into the metaverse, is that cryptocurrency and blockchain is all about decentralization, and there not being one entity that's in control of everything, but all of us kind of having our own control over the metaverse. And Facebook building their own metaverse kind of goes away from that. So I think the really big thing here is that the metaverse is what we're headed towards. It's already happening. The reason why Facebook is doing this is because they see the direction in which things are headed, and they want to be where the puck is going. Again, that Wayne Gretzky quote, I think, is very, very spot on for this. But the question is, what sort of metaverse do we want to live inside of? What sort of metaverse do we want to have in our world that we use and that we utilize? And how do we make sure that we do not make the mistakes of Web 2.0? So you can think of Web 1 sort of as email, right? It's just the first idea of the internet. It's kind of what we had in the mid to late 90s. Then Web 2.0 is really the apps and the social media that we have kind of been using for the last 10 years. That's sort of the full force. Web 2.0 is the Facebooks, Instagrams, all of these sort of apps. And Web 3.0 is that next step where all of these things are connected and they are completely, sort of like seamlessly merged together. And what we want to make sure is that we do not repeat the mistakes that we made in Web 2.0. So I'm not the one that's going to be able to figure this out, but really the thing is to keep an eye out. This is where the world is headed. We are going in a metaverse direction, but it's going to be really interesting to see how this shakes out. Obviously, Facebook has a lot of money and ability to build this out, but it comes with a cost. And the cost is that Facebook will want to have control over the metaverse. So this is going to be some really interesting things that we're going to be hearing about over the next couple of years. There's a lot of smart people moving into that direction and working on that stuff. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this develops over the next 2, 3, 5 years. It's really going to be very, very exciting. But before I jump over into the other news of the week, if you're enjoying this so far, definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel. I publish a new video every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, all about remote work and the digital nomad economy. So definitely hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if you are enjoying it. And thank you so much for tuning in live if you are watching this live. I love seeing you guys here. We've got Kyle from Germany. What's up, Kyle? Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate you being here and watching this live. It's always super fun to have people live here. But I'm going to jump over to the next kind of big piece of news that came out this week. And that is a really cool Quartz interview with Adam Ozimek, who is the head labor economist at Upwork. So this is really interesting because this interview over here at Quartz, I can actually even show it to you guys here. Just give me one quick second. It really talks about how, yes, remote work is happening. It's here now, but how the next phase of remote work will be even more disruptive. Yes, remote work has already disrupted a lot of things about our life, but we haven't even seen the beginning of it. And what Adam argues in this interview is that remote work is only getting started. And it's going to even more increase the change in the way of how we do things. One of the things that he predicts is that, and I quote here, he predicts that remote-first startups will figure out new ways of working asynchronously, making fully remote work more manageable than the version we use today. And he expects economic geography to shift in big ways, with workers free to live wherever they want to, from hometowns to ski towns instead of where they work. So the important thing here, and this is one of the things that he mentions as well, is that it's really important not to pretend like we know where this is headed, right? We don't yet know exactly what kind of changes this is going to make, but we know that it's going to cause changes in certain pockets, and we just don't know exactly how that is going to affect how we're going to, actually move forward from those changes. One of the things to look for, though, is the freelancification, if you want to say so, of corporate work. So now the companies were almost, due to COVID, forced to figure out how to do remote work. They're going to be far more comfortable with. And now they're far more comfortable with remote work. The next step is they're going to be far more comfortable to freelance out some parts of what needs to get done. So something that may have been done before internally can now be hired out to freelancers. And this is something that is certainly going to happen, that we are already seeing it in some sectors. It's going to be interesting to see kind of like how far does that go? How much of a company's work really gets contracted out to freelancers? One of the other things that he highlights is to really the next step to figuring things out is how does this transfer of knowledge work inside of your company? And this is what we talked about. We kind of mentioned with the previous article, the Facebook moving to Meta, is that asynchronous and figuring out how to do asynchronous work is really, really important inside of a remote company. And so figuring out exactly how to store all of your company knowledge in terms of how things are getting done so that employees don't have to be constantly asking each other and talking to each other about how to solve things. They can kind of go to a repository of knowledge is really, really critical to making asynchronous work work. So over the next couple of years, what we're going to see is a lot more companies trying to figure this out to really learn and understand how to do that. And once they do figure out how to store their company knowledge, the next step is going to be even more people getting hired outside of time zones. So that is really interesting. And again, another quote from Adam here that I thought was really interesting that relates a lot to us digital nomads. He says in that quote, "The success of a place will be less determined by the strength of the local labor market. A ski town would be a specific kind of place that might benefit because if you really love skiing, you can live there year round." So I think that we've seen this over the last couple of years. There's places like Bansko in Bulgaria, which have exploded ever since they kind of claimed to be a digital nomad hotspot. They kind of put the flag up. They said, hey, we want you guys here. We have lots of opportunity for you guys to ski, snowboard, enjoy the mountains. And we've already seen that, that happening. And I think it's going to be happening with even more places. There are islands out there right now that are trying to kind of be the ski town equivalent to island life. But also look for this in a more US focused view. Look for this kind of having an effect on Midwestern cities that can offer people an urban lifestyle without necessarily having all of the costs associated with a New York or Chicago or LA, San Francisco, etc. So that's definitely something to keep an eye out for. And I totally agree with Adam. Definitely check this article out. It's very, very interesting. There's some more things that he talks about in there. But I want to move on to the next article here, which is to watch out for this nasty remote work scam that has been going that's been flying around the internet. A lot of people have gotten burned by this. And I want to make sure that you guys do not get burned by this. So this was reported by, let me share my screen here with you guys very quickly. This was reported by ZDNet. They're rewriting another article, but essentially people are scamming people looking for remote work. Scammers going to be scammers, So the way that this works, this is really, really interesting and just goes on to show that you got to be careful on the internet. Essentially what they are doing is putting up job ads for positions with very large, sexy companies. So I don't know exactly what company they're using. This was not named in the article, obviously, but think a big, sexy company that you'd like to work with. I'd imagine like an Apple or like a Netflix or Facebook or something like that. And when you get hired for that job, you do actually go through like a video interview and stuff like that. But when you get hired for the job, they say that they will send you a check for you to purchase home office furnishings as long as it goes with their sort of approved supplier. And as that money, is showing up in your bank account, it's kind of taking time to process. A lot of people are deciding to, well, okay, while this check clears, I'm just going to go out there and buy it myself so that I'm not waiting and being kind of slowed down with producing my work or buy that. So then they go and they use their own credit card to buy furniture from this approved supplier. And then obviously you guys probably see where this is going. That check never clears. The money never enters into their account because it's a scam. So not only did these scammers essentially get paid for this furniture company, which obviously doesn't exist, but they also got your credit card information, whatever you're using to purchase that furniture with. So definitely be really, really careful if you are out there job hunting at the moment. Keep an eye out for during the interviews, these people are actually doing video interviews. So just because you're getting on a video interview with someone does not mean that they're legit. Make sure that you're being very careful. Never buy anything with your own money from an approved or suggested supplier for these sort of things. And I would also even take it a step further than that and just make sure that you look for jobs at places that vet the people who post the jobs on there. So, for example, my friends over at Dynamite Jobs, I believe they vet every single person who posts a job on there. So this way, that's one extra step to make sure that you are not going to end up in a scam. But be very careful. There's lots of really great opportunity out there right now with remote work, but just be very, very careful. Now, there's a few more really interesting stories inside of the newsletter. One about somebody in England who's trying to block the US from having access to their tax information. Because as you know, as a US citizen, if you are a US citizen, you're taxed on your global income. Doesn't matter if you pay tax somewhere else. So that's a really interesting story. Definitely check out in there. And also a story about how remote work could impact your 2021 income report. So definitely check that out. If you are a subscriber, it will be it's already in your inbox. If you're not a subscriber, head on over to thatremotelife.com/Nomad Insider and subscribe to the newsletter there. It goes out Monday mornings, and then we jump on here and review the most interesting parts of it at 12 p.m. EST every single morning. But I'm going to skip those stories and jump into something that's really, really interesting in my opinion, and that is this cheapest rent in Europe research. So I'm going to pull it up here because I was not prepared and I don't have that pulled up. But essentially, what this was this company went out there and kind of collected all of the information related to where are the cheapest places in Europe to rent an apartment. And I thought the findings were interesting to look at, but not necessarily surprising, since you can kind of guess where the cheapest parts are. I'm going to share it here with you guys in just 1 second. Man, my computer is not moving quickly since I'm also doing all of this. But all right, let me share my screen with you guys and we can take a look at this. All right, you guys, so here we go. Let's talk about this. Here's kind of what the newsletter looks like. But here it is. Here's the research done by the World Maps on Instagram. So what they've done here is they show you where the cheapest rent in Europe is. And as you can tell, the cheapest rent is obviously in the Balkans, with the more expensive rent being in England, France, the Netherlands. Just kind of as you move west, you're going to hit higher rent prices. The cheapest places to rent an apartment were Turkey and Macedonia, with under $300 per month. Turkey coming in at $231 and Macedonia at $285. Now, the thing to keep in mind here is that this is a bit misleading because the research was done using the average cost of a month's rent for a one-room apartment in the center of the capital. Here's the tricky thing, is that the capital of Turkey is Ankara, which is in the mainland Turkey. So it's actually not Istanbul. And Istanbul is going to be the most popular location for digital nomads. It's also the most populous city. So I think that the rent will be higher in Istanbul. And because of that, this is a bit misleading. So you can expect the rents to be higher in Istanbul. That is where most people go as digital nomads. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, the most expensive place is England because London is the capital and London has extremely high rent prices. Now, again, this is not for Airbnb. These prices are not for Airbnb. They're for actual long-term rentals in those cities, kind of locally. But I do think this information is still valuable, even if you do live out of Airbnbs full-time like I do, because you can kind of assume this is going to be the same for Airbnb. So yeah, it might be, instead of it being $444 in Bulgaria, it could be like $1444 for a month or $1,000 a month. But the general sort of trajectory of which countries have higher rent prices will be the same. So you can expect this trend to continue even with Airbnb prices. But that's it, you guys. That's kind of all of the information that I had for you guys today. I hope that you enjoyed that. If you did, definitely let people know about this. Hit the subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up. I love seeing what you guys think about this and commenting. Oh, we have a question here from Kyle. So before we say goodbye, I do want to answer this question. Kyle says, what changes or opportunities do you think Web 3.0 brings to online marketing? Man, that is a big one. So I think a lot of the things, let me think about this. Obviously, I think you're going to be able to advertise more in a metaverse way. So think about this with like, what is the game called that is already in there? Meta something, meta map, meta. I can't remember what it's called right now. But there's already video games out there that like actually are trying to do the metaverse thing. And so while it starts as a game, these could be the places that we go to actually get work done, to actually shop for things. So, for example, imagine being inside of this video game, which I'm going to Google the name of right now because it's driving me crazy. And I think it's important for this. I think it's actually called Metaverse, isn't it? I will look it up here in 1 second. But essentially, the important thing here is that you're going to be able to go in there and actually shop for like imagine shopping for Nike shoes inside of the metaverse or buying IKEA furniture there. Like imagine being able to walk through an IKEA like furniture store in the metaverse and being able to say, I want that table and I want that bed and so on and so forth. And so I think that with that, there's obvious advertising opportunities inside of that. Decentraland is what it's called. So Decentraland already has some parts of this. So I think that online marketing inside of the metaverse is really going to be this sort of idea of how do you get seen inside a game like Decentraland. So imagine if you have a store, you could, for example, have some sort of marketing inside of the metaverse, inside of Decentraland. So I think that's going to be really interesting. I also think imagine like holding these sort of calls, these sort of events inside of the metaverse. So just sort of take the online marketing things that already work and then transfer them into a metaverse kind of native world, kind of like Decentraland. So I know that's kind of not a super cohesive answer, but it's going to be really interesting. And I was listening to an interesting podcast episode with Naval and Tim Ferriss and one more gentleman whose name I don't remember, but he's from Andreessen Horowitz. And what they talked about was this idea of things that you're trying to bring into something else. So think about like the internet originally was trying to replicate what we saw in newspapers and magazines. And then Web 2.0 was kind of making it native, right? So the idea of Facebook and Instagram and these sort of entities are completely native to the internet. There's no sort of physical world version of them. And our very first attempt at the metaverse is going to be to try to take the things that we've developed in Web 2.0 and bring them into the metaverse, right? So kind of like online shopping, but then pull it into the metaverse. And the really interesting thing here is going to be in terms of online marketing is going to be what are the metaverse native versions of online marketing that we can't quite yet even predict. So I think that in terms of online marketing, here's what Web 3.0 brings. The first step is going to be taking the online marketing that we are already used to in our current version of the internet and just sort of transferring it to Web 3.0. So some of the things I talked about, instead of shopping on the IKEA website, you're going into an IKEA showroom in the metaverse inside of something like Decentraland or Facebook's Meta and going out there and picking out furniture, right? That's kind of the idea of taking online shopping and moving it over into the metaverse. Now, what does that mean for a metaverse that is, you know, or I should say online marketing that is Web 3.0 native? I don't quite know. I think it's going to be really interesting to look for that. And one of the other things that was mentioned that they talked about in that conversation that I mentioned earlier is that usually those are the things that win, right? Like, yes, there's a place for the stuff that isn't native in there, but the things that go big are the things that are native to the platform. So the things that went big in Web 2.0 were the things that were native to Web 2.0. It wasn't magazines that were just put digitally, right? It was like Facebook. It was being able to have user generated content. So keep an eye out for the things that are Web 3.0 native as they start to pop up in online marketing. And that would be a good bet in terms of what sort of opportunities are going to be there. So, for example, if we were to look back at this, it would be like advertising in a digital magazine, right? Like a magazine that had a physical version of it and then went digital, or doing Facebook ads, which are Web 2.0 native. So just keep an eye out for that as we transition to Web 3.0. That's a really great question. Thank you, Kyle. But anyways, you guys, if you have any questions, I'm going to hang out here for another 10 or 20 seconds. Definitely drop them in the comment section so that we can chat. I love these questions. It's so much fun to talk about this and to hear what you guys are thinking. But if there are no more questions, thank you so much for watching this. I really, really appreciate you being here. It's a ton of fun doing these. Definitely hit the subscribe button because we're going to have another video Wednesday and Friday and then the next Monday and so on and so forth. We are trying to be the main place, the main spot on YouTube for digital nomads and remote workers. So definitely hit subscribe. Be an early subscriber. We're getting close to 1,000 subscribers. I'm so pumped. We've seen so much growth in the channel this year. But anyways, you guys, thank you so much and have an amazing week.